Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Flashpoint Legacy. Or at least the first 3 episodes of Flashpoint Legacy, because that's all I really have here in this prototype. Speaking of which, this is a prototype, rules, components, and all that stuff subject to change. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below, and it's also worth noting for disclaimer's sake that I have been told that generative AI has been used in some aspects of the prototype, but will not be used in the final game at all. And with that, let's talk about this. And this is going to be a more complicated review than I typically would give for a variety of reasons. 3 specifically. First is that everything you see here kind of looks like Flashpoint Fire Rescue, because you're seeing a mix of, well, Flashpoint Fire Rescue components, the box from Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and then a bunch of printed out things as far as, you know, the actual Legacy and all that stuff components come out. Secondly is the fact that this is, as far as prototypes go, I would say that the stuff I have here feels almost more like it's in the playtest phase. It's not the nicest looking prototype to be able to showcase and show off all the various things that make this, well, a cool game. And then the third aspect is, this is a Legacy game. And I don't want to spoil, even though I've only gone through 3 episodes of it, I don't want to spoil your journey at all, so I kind of want to talk about my experience with it without actually showing you many of the things that would make Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy new. So I kind of effectively have to show you mostly Flashpoint Fire Rescue, talk about my feelings and thoughts about the Legacy stuff I've seen so far, but not really show you a lot of it. So it's going to be slightly complicated as far as the review goes, but I'll do my best. I'll try to convey my thoughts, show you as much as I possibly can without diving into spoiler territory. I will say you will obviously see the first map in front of you, and past that I'll try to keep everything to an absolute minimum. So let's dive into this and see how we can do on this. Flashpoint Fire Rescue is a game that came out quite some time ago. I've been a fan of the game for a very long time. In fact, it's amongst the first Kickstarter projects I ever backed, well before I fell down the Kickstarter rabbit hole. There were a few projects here and there I would touch upon, and Flashpoint Rescue is one of the games that I would get everything that came out for it. I was a huge fan of the system. One of the first games I ever got into the hobby with was Pandemic, and Flashpoint Fire Rescue felt like a kind of more chaotic version of Pandemic. It kind of had that simple cooperative aspect. You're a bunch of firefighters. The buildings are burning down. There's a variety of maps and rules and modules and all these small little things that all ultimately add up to the fact that you're rolling dice, the fire is generating, it's chaotic, it's crazy, and it kind of gave you a slightly more Ameritrash version of the Euro game that was Pandemic. So it kind of hit a lot of things I liked in games, and to that end I dove all into it. I got all the content for it, I got all the expansions. It's been a game that I really liked, and to that end, when they reached out and said, hey, would you like to cover Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy, I was like, I love Legacy games, I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue, let's go ahead and do it. And so, let's talk about what Flashpoint does to begin with. Flashpoint has a general system, and this is going to apply to your first episode of Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy, as they call Flashpoint Legacy or Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy. Either way, all these will apply to your first episode of it. The basic idea is it's a cooperative game. You're going to be putting out the fires and rescuing people of interest, persons of interest in the game. Meanwhile, every turn you're going to be rolling for fire and having fire generate. You're going to start the game by going through a sequence of steps. I'm not going to focus on every little aspect, but some of the main things you're going to be doing is you're going to be rolling to generate fire. Your first roll is actually going to be a specific location, but I'm going to just go ahead and show you that this works. You're going to be generating explosions in the game to start off how badly the situation is in the building that you're wandering into, because you are wandering into an ongoing fire. That's what's happening, and you're trying to fight those fires while preserving the lives of the people inside. So you're going to go ahead and roll. Over here we have 4-4. That means we're going to look at this track over here, and we're going to go ahead and put down on 4-4. In fact, this map is upside down, so let's go ahead and just rotate this for a second. We're going to go ahead and cycle this around. Give me a second. You could work in it, just faster to actually see it. But we're going to go ahead, put these down, put our ambulances and fire trucks back on the board, and then 4-4 is going to be over here. So we're going to go ahead and start an explosion, and explosions are going to be basically when you put down a fire, but you also put fire in all the adjacent spaces where possible, except in this case, we're going to put a damage marker on the wall instead, because there's a wall there, so we're going to put a damage marker. We're going to flip for the next location. It's going to be 5-6. So we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on 5-6, which is over here. So again, fire is going to go in all adjacent locations, but then we're going to have a damage marker on the wall over here. And then lastly, we're going to flip this to its reverse side for the last spot, and then roll this. I think that was 6 over there, there's a 3, there we go, and we have a 5-3 over here. So the 5-3 is going to be, let's go ahead and see where this is, 5-3 is over here, and that means we're going to go ahead and ricochet fire in all directions. Now the way it works is if there's already fire, it kind of shoots through the fire. When you have an explosion, explosions have a lot more chaos to them than anything else. They rattle as far as they can go until they hit an empty space, or something that obstructs the empty space. It's a plume of heat, and it needs to basically release itself, which means it's not happy if there's just fire already there. So here we have the board. It's all started as far as the, the start of a horrible flame. We're going to throw some hazardous materials in various spots on the board. Now, we'd roll for this, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out for right now. We have some hazardous materials. We have a little janitorial closet over there. And then we roll for the people of interest. So with that end, we're going to the same idea. You're going to go ahead and roll, and I'm going to do the first one, and then the rest I'll just put on the board. We have 1, 8. We're going to look for 1, 8, put it down, and there we go. Let's pretend we had rolled 1 over here. You would follow the arrows. There's going to be little arrows here, little blue arrows. So you follow the arrow if you land on fire, put them out, and let's go ahead and put the other one over there. And again, this would all be done through rolls. I'm just kind of setting up the setting the stage, as it were. This is all a basic game. This is before you get into any legacy elements. This is just basic Flashpoint Fire Rescue. You have a map. You have these grid lines over here, the 6s, the 2 different color dice over there. You're going to have these little ambulance and fire truck that are moving around the board. You have your firefighters themselves, all with their ability cards as well, which are different in the legacy game, but they'll have their own unique abilities. This person can move diagonally. That person can move into a spot as they extinguish fire. This person has, this person can chop down walls faster. You have different people with different abilities that will just give them something that gives them a leg up over the other players. Meanwhile, you go ahead and start the game. And to that end, what you do on your turn, there's a little play area that will, let's go show you the play area over here. We have a perfect play area over here that covers everything you need to know for your actions and your turn sequence over here. You're going to spend your 4 AP on actions. We have a whole action breakdown, and that's where you're going to have people doing things like moving around the board. So we move into the spot through an open door over here. By the way, there should be doors on the, closed doors on these spots over here as well on the board. But you're going to move into the spot over here on the edge of the board, and then you can go ahead and spend another action to go ahead and extinguish this to smoke. Although you want to go ahead and spend another action to get rid of smoke, because smoke next to fire always turns into fire. So we just spent 3 actions. We moved in, we extinguished 2 aspects over there, and now for our last action, we're actually going to use one of these and save our actions. Players can save up to 4 actions on their characters, which gives you some degree of flexibility, especially when in a situation where you kind of want to extinguish fire to smoke, but doing so is not enough because smoke will always come back. So it takes 1 action to turn smoke into nothing, and 2 actions to turn fire into nothing, because you have to go through that step, those stages over there. But again, if it's next to fire, you want to do it all or nothing. That's basically your turn. You go ahead and you just moved around, extinguishing fire, and that's it for right now. Now, at the end of your turn, what you're typically going to do is you're going to advance fire, which means you're going to go ahead and roll these dice over here, and we go ahead and put fire on 5, 5. 5, 5 is over here. We're going to trigger an explosion. So again, it's going to trigger an explosion. Fire's going to rattle in all directions, except in this case, there's nowhere for the fire to go, so it's actually going to blow a hole in this wall. 2 damage markers effectively make a wall into a hole, so we now have a damage wall here, and just straight up holes over here. Which means the next time you have fire going through here, it's going to rattle straight through all the way through the edges over there. You have to be mindful, though, because there's a few ways you can lose the game. You could lose enough people of interest, because these people over here, you could have explosions hitting them and just destroying them. You also could run out of damage markers, and if you run out of damage markers, you'll lose the game as well. So you want to be mindful of different ways you can lose the game, and one of them is just the building is just not structurally, there's no structural integrity to the building if you have too many damage markers on the board. The walls are falling apart, everything's collapsing, and just collapses down on everyone left in the building. That's the general structure of the game. There's a bunch of other things to get into, but the general idea is you're going to be spending your actions, your 4 action points a turn. You're going to be spending those action points to go around and effectively extinguish fire, to be able to go ahead and find people of interest. Once you do find a person of interest, you'll flip this over and see, because sometimes it's nothing. It was just a phantom noise, at which point you'll roll to put out a new person of interest and put them down somewhere else on the board. You'll go ahead and wander, you'll find them, and there we go. We got a person that we have to save. You'll have to spend extra AP to be able to take them out. You'll have to take them out to a spot on the board, and then call the ambulance around and be able to move them to the ambulance to be able to rescue them. And so you're trying to manage the process of finding people of interest while containing the fire. The less fire there is on the board, the more you can contain it. In general, if you're trying to spend all your actions every turn taking out the fact that 4 fires started last round, you're never going to keep up. because you'll never be able to keep up as long as explosions are being triggered. Explosions basically generate more fire. They are the fastest way that people get killed, both you guys knocking unconscious as well as the people of interest, and you have to basically keep things as contained as possible. Remove hazardous materials. If you have fire and hazardous material, it'll trigger its own explosion. You want to be avoiding that as well. And so you're juggling this completely chaotic aspect of fire popping up all over the house, and you need to make sure that the chances of hitting flames and triggering explosions are as slim as possible in the game. That is base Flashpoint Fire Rescue. The Legacy game is going to take that formula and then advance it further. What it's going to do is basically introduce episodes. I believe there are going to be 14 episodes. I could be mistaken just looking at the table of contents over here, what they have planned. It looks like the base game will have 14 episodes. I don't know what it'll be. Obviously crowdfunding, so there might be extras or expansions or all these things. But I believe they're looking at 14 episodes for you to go through, each of them introducing some degree of story, as well as some degree of mechanical unlocks that go through the game. This is where I'm in that weird territory where there's only so much I can really tell you without starting to unveil the mystery mysteries for you. But you're going to have a firehouse over here, and the firehouse is going to store various upgrades and equipment and gear and things you'll unlock in the game that are going to be slowly unlocked. You'll be able to bring that into additional scenarios, powering up your firefighters in different ways. Your firefighters don't just have their own card, but they also have aspects of the cards in which they can be better or worse depending on how things hit them, depending on, if they get knocked unconscious too many times or have things get in the way, or alternatively just giving them abilities where they can utilize and benefit from those as well. You're going to be going through episode arcs where you meet characters and have stories happening. There's going to be a full book over here. I think it's this one over here, which is going to give you I'm going to flip through this rapidly over here. You have a whole story and aspect of what's going on in this scenario, people you can talk to, some degree of a training situation going on in the game where you're basically being you're new firefighters at a station, you're learning the ropes, you're training slowly but surely. You're going to choose which firefighters to bring with you to the particular episode you're on, which firefighters are back at base slowly training up their skills. You're going to be dealing with various people you interact with along the way, and depending how you engage with the scenario, there's going to be a whole book of paragraphs over here, which is going to give you these various, go ahead and read chapter through point 300. So you can go ahead and read 300 and see what it has to tell you as far as what degree of story is happening. There'll be some degree of choose your own adventure as you choose to do this or that, or possibly depending on how the episode unfolds, depending on whether you successfully rescue things, you're going to have things like that happening that will affect, the stuff you walk into the next episode with and the different unlocks you'll get along the way. There's going to be accomplishments you're going through, or achievements. I believe they're called achievements, where each episode is going to give you certain goals you're going to go for, and you're going to record those achievements that you gain because those will have an impact on your progression as well. And so effectively what it does is across 14 episodes, it takes the base idea of Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and then it adds that narrative element. There's going to be a whole aspect of, and this is where we have these maps here. I'm going to show you very briefly over here, but if we have these maps over here, you're going to be flipping out these maps to be able to give you different map situations you're engaging with. So suddenly, we have another map that you're facing off against, and you have these further flip books. Again, prototype over here. Don't read too much into these as far as how these ones operate this, but the basic idea is you have Flashpoint Fire Rescue, you have the core idea of it, but now it's episodically generated or episodically advancing throughout the game system as you uncover more things, interact with various people of interest, try to make decisions around what you have to save or what's happening along the way, and try to figure out the greater story behind whatever sense of progression there is in the game. Again, it's a legacy game. It's very hard to really convey all the things that are happening. I'll say that you'll have a fire deck, which is going to be normally in a typical game of Flashpoint Fire Rescue, you're just rolling to generate fire every turn, but this time around you have a fire deck. The fire deck's going to start off in episode 1, and it's going to iterate and change depending on the episode you're dealing with, giving you different rules or cards or things that enter that fire deck that, again, change the way things advance through the game. It is Flashpoint Fire Rescue with progression. It is Flashpoint Fire Rescue with unlocks. It is Flashpoint Fire Rescue with story. It just has all these things layered on top of that game that you either know and love, or maybe you didn't like it, or maybe you just never played it. But that's what Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy is. I always feel weird reviewing legacy games. I always feel weird reviewing legacy games because I just can't tell you all the stuff I want to tell you. But spoiler-free legacy review and all that. So let's dive into my thoughts, my opinions, and all this stuff. And it's going to divide that up into Flashpoint Fire Rescue and then the legacy elements. Because off the bat, I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I'm a fan of the system. I've enjoyed what the game has brought to the table over the years. And to me, it basically gives you the standard formula of a cooperative system where you're trying to beat back the bad things, but meanwhile, every turn the bad things are happening. And the basic formula that game has, I kind of touched upon this already to a certain extent of the game, but you start off in a bad situation. And it's up to you to try to power through that bad situation as much as possible. And generally, it has a mid-episode arc where either things are overwhelming and you're falling apart and you're dying and people are dying slowly but surely. You are allowed to have deaths in the game. You're still a good firefighter if you rescued most of the people who otherwise would have died, but too many deaths and you lose the game. And you have a certain achievement, you have a certain objective as you typically want to rescue 7 people to be able to go ahead and win the scenario. And then a certain amount of deaths, you lose the scenario, the building collapses, you lose the scenario, all firefighters unconscious, you lose the scenario, all those things will get in the way of you actually winning. And if you can make your way past the first half of the game, you can usually stay on top of the fire enough that you can actually go ahead and start winning. The first part of the game is literally you spend your turn putting out 1 fire and then explosion and 4 fires pop up and you're like, my turn, I got rid of 1 spot and then 4 more pop up. But across the course of the game, if you can stay slightly ahead, the luck will balance out where an empty spot will have a little bit of smoke appearing. And that's not much of a threat. And so you spend your next turn getting rid of 2 more fire. And if you can stay just enough ahead of the fire, eventually you get to a point where the fire is mostly in control. And now you're in control of the board. You still have to play some degree of catch-up and maintenance, but now you can really start rescuing people because you're ahead or on top of the fire. Depending on the player count you're playing as, that will have a different degree of how you interact with the game because the more players you have, the more you can say, hey, you're the one who's currently rescuing people and we'll put out the fire. And you can kind of divide and conquer while you try to deal with these slowly increasing flames in whatever map you're on. The game does have a degree of chaos to it. One of the things that's interesting about Flashpoint Fire Rescue, for better or for worse, whether you like it or not, is the fact that there's more chaos. There's less procedural planning. You can't plan around where the fire is. You can't just say, hey, we have a localized spot over here, and that means the fire is going to pop up here. No, the fire can pop up anywhere. Yes, if it pops up here, there'll be an explosion. So you have that degree of foreknowledge in play, but it has that higher degree of chaos for better or for worse. If you like the idea where you can kind of plan around, like, hey, this is more of a concentrated area, fire's going to be happening here, not necessarily. You roll the dice, you see what happens, and that's kind of it. That's kind of the situation. And so for better or for worse, there's more chaos in the game, but that adds to the sense of what the game is. That adds to the sense of a fire burning, of a building burning down, and you constantly on your toes. And it gives you various characters who have different upgrades, different abilities on them, and so those abilities give you something else fun to engage with. The general idea of Flashpoint Fire Rescue for me was always a fun cooperative system that had a little bit more chaos than something like Pandemic, for better and for worse, because there's parts of it I like more, and there's parts of it that are just crazy, where you just have like that 1 in 48 chance where something just gets hit and there's nothing you could have done differently for it. And there's things about the game that are frustrating because of that. There's areas of the game where you'll go ahead and you'll dive into the game and boom, the first roll of the game, you'll have a person of interest die. That can and will happen. There's nothing you can do about that, which is already a little irritating in Flashpoint itself. I would say it's more interesting in the Legacy version, because it's more irritating in the Legacy version, because this game does have that achievement system, and you can lose an achievement on turn 1 with no agency over how it could have played out. That is absolutely possible in the game. It's not that common, but it's absolutely possible that a bad roll before you could have done anything to mitigate or change the game in any way, shape, or form can cost you movement forward in the game, which again, in Flashpoint Fire Rescue is almost more. This is where we start diving into how the Legacy version impacts my opinion of the game. But in Flashpoint Fire Rescue, it's kind of almost funny when stuff like that happens. In the Legacy version, if you're on a 14 mission arc, a 14 episode arc, and something gets taken away from you on your first turn before you could have done anything to in any way impact any agency or change over the situation, I can see that being more frustrating. For me, it would be less frustrating because, frankly, between you and I, if something like that happened on turn 1 before I could do anything about it, and if it would have an ongoing impact, I might just roll those dice again. But if you don't like that concept of a tweaking for the terrible fate of the universe, then that might be frustrating for you. Now, I will say, as the game progresses, and this is where the Legacy game gets actually interesting, because the Legacy game gives you powers and abilities and unlocks, there are things that, again, I'm only 3 episodes in, so I can't even speak for all the stuff you'll find, but there are things you'll find along the way that kind of give you more control or more ability to mitigate around particularly bad situations, particularly bad luck in the game, which, again, it depends on the situation, because I don't mind bad luck in the game. I just mind it when I had no sense of agency over what I could mess with or alter or change. That's when I personally find it more frustrating. So it's in that weird middle spot as far as things like that go. What I will say is, as far as the Legacy element goes, the Legacy overall adds things that I enjoy. I generally enjoy Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I generally enjoy Legacy games. You combine the two, and that's usually a good recipe. And I think that I do like the stuff that I've seen so far. I'm only 3 episodes in, and I like that extra sense of, rules are being added to the game, and those add interesting decisions as far as, boom, now we're interacting with this. Now we're dealing with that. Oh, look, this map is totally different. You have things like that in the game, and I like that sense of story and progression going through it overall. So, without getting into the details of what's being unlocked and all those, I like unlocks, and I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Those are just good. Just off the bat, those things are just a good recipe. The areas where I'm slightly more critical of is, first of all, in this, again, prototype and all this stuff, but first of all, there's some aspects of the story I've encountered in the book of paragraphs over here is literally like, sometimes it's like a little choose-your-own adventure that has nothing to do with any mechanical choice whatsoever. I'm not even saying, forget branching pathways. I'm saying, like, it doesn't even impact the game at all. It's like, oh, you did this or you did that. What's the difference? Read a different paragraph. I don't know. That's all there is, and that's kind of fluff. It's not like a complaint. It's just like I'm not there for that. I don't need the branching paragraph with no impact. Like at least make it so that the fire starts in a different area on the board or something. I don't know. Have a different start to the way the scenario plays out. But having branching pathways of choice with no mechanical consequence whatsoever just takes it, to me personally, on a personal level, that, if anything, takes away from my feeling of agency. It makes me feel like you're directing me on the story that has nothing to do with the game I'm playing. I'm not here for a choose-your-own-adventure book. I'm here for a choose-your-own-adventure game to a certain extent, or even not choose-your-own-adventure, but just I'm here for the game. And so I don't like that aspect when you have a fluff choice but no real impact. Again, it's not a bad thing. It's just an unnecessary thing that I don't particularly care for. More importantly, though, on a bigger level, I'll say that for me, the game adds, and this is where it's very hard to review something that's both a legacy game and a prototype and in flux and all that. And again, like I said already, a lot of elements of what I have over here feel more like a playtest copy than a prototype. It's like a lot of like printed sheets and folded paper. It's not the best to be able to properly experience a Legacy game. And the tricky part there is I like all the things that Flashpoint Legacy is adding. But I also have to weigh up the fact that you are dealing with something that's going to be adding rules maintenance every single game, and adding fiddliness, and adding grab these cards and do this thing, and be mindful of this stuff over here. And at least as far as the prototype goes, that's a degree of rules overhead that you might find more frustrating. The question effectively a Legacy game has to ask you is all the stuff that's adding, it's also adding more maintenance, more rules, more progression, more things to be on top of. And is the upside worth that downside? And I haven't seen enough to know yet. I want to play through this entire thing, make no mistake. I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue, it's 14 episodes, I'm going to finish this, that's an easy decision. But I don't yet have a good sense of whether the things it's adding, or even the sense of story, or what's happening along the way, even though I'm not here for the story, but like the sense of something going on. And there does seem to be hints to underlying tones of stuff, but I will see how that all progresses. But I'll say that I do need more time with a finished copy of the game to see whether I can confidently say, this is worth it. This is the version of Flashpoint Fire Rescue you should be playing. Recently I had the chance to play Ticket to Ride Legacy, and Ticket to Ride, like Legends of the West or whatever it is, I definitely felt that, again, it adds rules maintenance along the way, but it constantly was worth that payoff. It was worth the extra degree of maintenance and just being on top of all the extra things along the way. And I just don't know where Flashpoint Fire Rescue Legacy is. Meaning it's not a criticism, it's an uncertainty based on what I've seen so far. So far the things it's added have been small stuff that adds a lot to the rules overhead, while not necessarily adding to my inherent enjoyment of the scenarios I'm going through. I like the progression, I like the changes, I like the unlocks. But there's a lot of other rule stuff being added that are more things you have to be aware of, while not necessarily yet engaging with my strategic satisfaction of the experience. So, again, it's hard to critique without getting more into it, but effectively where I am with this one is, I like it. As a Flashpoint Fire Rescue fan, I plan on going through this and I will enjoy it. I don't yet know if this is the best degree of things added versus rules maintenance as far as the ratio of that goes. But again, I'll have to see more from it to be able to fully answer that. So as far as final thoughts, rating and all that stuff, rating-wise, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 rating-wise. Although I will say a big part of that is not because of what the Legacy system adds, it's just me liking Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I'm a fan of the game system, and this is Legacy on top of that, so it's not like even like the biggest testament of this version of the game. I think overall where I am with it is I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue. As a fan of the game, I like the Legacy elements that are being added, but I also want to see more, and I need to see it in less of a prototype phase to this degree to be able to fully understand where I end up on it. So, I guess as far as that goes, it's a tentative recommendation with the desire to see more from the system. That's why I'm in this one. Anyways, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I understand it's a bit wishy-washy at the end. A lot of that's just, not being able to fully dive into this and kind of getting just far enough into it that I feel like I'm being teased with what's there, but not yet being fully confident in the system either, while still enjoying what I have been able to see until now. And in any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.